honest, I get around another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm disappointed on my mission. I'm on with what I'm giving. I see the ambition, expedition, filling positions, looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings, and I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, Harry, to you, station manager, WNHH 103.5 FM, who really kind of helps to steer our ship of state and ship of nation through this communication headwaters and communication tsunamis and torrential rainfalls. And we have some folks that are going to bring some young lady that's going to bring some, I think, peace, happiness, and joy to us. She may say some stark things, some things that might surprise you, but I think it's things that need to stimulate you as well. Stimulate you in a good way, in a positive way, in terms of what the future might look like, particularly in terms of the cannabis industry. But whether it's the days of prohibition or whether, Tiana, if we were back in like 1860 or whatever, about the Opium Wars, history is really replete with economic opportunities as well as governmental interventions and governmental regulations. So to be a citizen of the nation state today, whether you identify as an American or whether we're in the Ukraine, it's clear that economics impacts everyone. And it's a golden opportunity to have Tiana Victoria Hercules with me this morning. Tiana has an attorney at law, as well as has a master's of business administration. And that combination, we hear about black magic and young ladies, and particularly young black women, being smarter than the men. Yes, I said it. And unfortunately, guys, this is the case. Whether it depends on how you want to define smarter, but in terms of the diploma acquisition and the income, they are leading the race. So guys, we got to kind of step up to the plate, but I digress. Tiana, that's a different show. Yes. But Tiana Victoria Hercules is with us. So we're going to talk about the cannabis industry, why it's important for people to kind of be involved with this. It might be a gold rush, it might be a platinum rush, it might be a Bitcoin rush for some, and it might be a welfare check for others or a no check for others. So it's important to kind of understand what's involved with this emerging cannabis industry and the current and in general, but in particular the landscape in Connecticut. And we're going to talk about the hopes. Is Lady Jane a word that we can kind of share publicly, Tiana?
Oh, absolutely. That's the brand. That's the business name, and that's what I've been kind of putting out there when I do my marketing. And so, absolutely, Lady Jane is it. I'm synonymous with luxury, wellness, and equity. So please do utilize it. And thank you so much for having me, Tom. It's good to connect with you or reconnect with you after so long of our days with Connecticut Health Foundation and being health fellows and talking about the importance of health equity and eliminating social disparities in health. And now, I know you do so much wonderful work in your community throughout the greater New Haven area. So it's a pleasure and honor to be here to talk about this exciting journey that I'm embarking on in the industry of cannabis. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, for sure. And thanks to the internet. I mean, as you may know, we have a lot of loyal local listeners, but we really have a lot of loyal listeners really throughout the globe. And this is the really excitement where I can talk to someone such as yourself in the Hartford area, but the information you're sharing is of information wherever a person might be on the planet. So Tiana, let's jump in. Talk to us about what inspired you to enter this, I won't say this jungle, but let's just say this cannabis industry.
Yes, depending on who you're talking about, it can be a little bit of a jungle or, the Wild Wild West, maybe a better way to describe it. But I think a few things, as you mentioned, I am an attorney and criminal defense is the area of practice that I focus in right now. And, I've been watching, the war on drugs as a Black person, as a person who lives in an urban community, you can't escape that. That reality and the impacts. And so obviously that has very much characterized a part of my life and my upbringing. And then to see, across the country, cannabis becoming legalized, first on the medical side, but now on the adult use side, it certainly intrigued me for a few ways. Obviously, from a criminal justice standpoint, wondering, okay, so now this thing is legal. What does that mean for all the folks who were locked up for marijuana possession? And then being very much shocked by the staggering numbers when we talk about the profits and the fact that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And by and large, people of color, Black people specifically, are not represented in the industry as owners and even as employees. And so from those two perspectives, I really wanted to keep an eye on what was happening in Connecticut and figure out how could I position myself to be part of this industry or at least undergo this process to help educate and inform people in my community about what it could possibly mean for them in the areas of criminal justice reform, as well as community reinvestment, restorative justice, and creating intergenerational wealth within our community. So it just hit a lot of different markers for me from about, what I am passionate about, but also looking at the entrepreneurship side. I've always been fascinated about doing something that's different, that's innovative and groundbreaking. And I think this industry really lends itself to so many different avenues because there is so much that is not known about the plant. And I believe that the possibilities are endless, and Black people, Black women, to me, are part of the biggest innovators in our culture. And so how do I put myself in a position to be able to connect with other innovative entrepreneurs and women of color to really elevate this industry to its fullest potential? So those are kind of all the reasons that inspired me to enter into it. And just a lot of fearlessness and courage, fueled by, the blessing of my parents and family members supporting me. And so it's been interesting. I've been learning a whole lot. So.
Absolutely. And we have about 40 or 5 or so more minutes, so we can kind of, take a deep dive, so to speak. And particularly before I ask you about Lady Jane, and I love the branding and the name. To talk to us a little bit about I would say the current landscape as you see it. Certainly, land changes. People acquire land, people build on land, people destroy land, but it certainly is a dynamic situation. But how do you perceive that the current landscape in Connecticut pertaining to this industry / opportunity?
Yeah, so a lot of it still remains to be seen, of course, because licenses have not yet been awarded, right? But Connecticut, as of July 1st, it will be, legalized for possession of adult use cannabis. So the average person certainly can possess cannabis up to certain quantities. And so you have started to already see a trend towards significant decriminalization. However, I would say that's not totally 100% true, because I still am representing people who have been charged with marijuana possession or marijuana sales. And so from the legal perspective, that's where we're at. On the industry side, Connecticut has rolled out its lottery process, whereby that is the way to get a license. And there are several different license types. So you have the retailer, those who can sell cannabis at a store, just like you would sell anything else, obviously with a lot of regulations. You have a producer, manufacturer license, where people who want to make products and, isolate cannabis and infuse other products and extract THC and utilize it in different things, whether it be an edible or a salve or some type of topical. And so that's where folks in that space will be able to do that if they acquire that license. There's a transporter license, because those who cultivate the cannabis will need someone to transport it from the cultivation facility to the retail facility and distribute it that way. Delivery license as well. So individuals who may have some logistics and supply background may want to be involved in delivering cannabis to consumers from the retail location. What am I missing? Producer, manufacturer, food and beverage is another license.
Right.
So individuals who want to make, drinks, which will be Connecticut's market is wide open for that. We don't have any current existing drinks and not very many, edible products on the market. So there's going to be a huge market opening opportunity for individuals who get those licenses. And then we have the micro cultivators, and that is up to, I believe it's up to 10,000 square feet of canopy. So if you want to be a smaller grower, which actually 10,000 square feet of canopy is actually kind of significant if you really think about it, you could probably supply your own retail location with the micro cultivation license. And then separate from those licenses, so those licenses types were all done via lottery. You had a regular lottery, and then you had the social equity lottery. And I know you have had Kibra on before, so she may have, this may be redundant for the things that she
No, on the
explained.
contrary, because it's such new information. And as you know, in communication, for people need to hear something sometimes 10, 20, 30 times before something sinks in.
Yes. So the social equity licenses were so all the license had a certain cap of how many they were going to give. So for example, the retail license, there's going to be 12. 6 of those will be social equity. 6 of those will be traditional lottery applicants. And so to be a social equity, there's a certain criteria that the regulators had established for that. You had to either be born or live in a disproportionately impacted area. So when we think about New Haven, Hartford, New London, Waterbury, Bridgeport, areas that were significantly disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, your income has to be, I believe it's 30% of the medium, the medium household income for federally. So I think for 2-person households, like 250,000 or something like that. And yeah, I think those were pretty much the criteria to be a social equity applicant. And so what that essentially meant for folks is that your application fees were split in half, and you have, kind of like the first grab at these select licenses through social equity. If you're not selected through that process, then you will be placed into the regular lottery. So you have almost 2 different opportunities to obtain a license. What we have seen, at least in my kind of cursory overview, and I don't remember how many applications have been submitted at this point, it was quite a significant amount. But for example, so social equity applicants, obviously, this is a very financially heavy undertaking to get into the cannabis industry. It takes a lot of resources in order to compete, in order to even, build out your operation, and then being able to be compliant. That's even before you, building your infrastructure in your facility, before you even get your product and start marketing and adding those costs of, staff and insurance and all of that. And so social equity applicants, just because in order to be a social equity applicant, that means your income can't be a certain amount. So that means you certainly don't have a bunch of resources lying around, which then means you need to partner with a backer to support you financially. And so in order for it to be a true social equity deal, the social equity applicant has to maintain 65% of the ownership and control of the business. And so what we've seen, at least again in my review, is one company had submitted, I think I've lost count, around 700 and some odd applications. I'm sure it was probably 1,000. And you're talking about $250 a pop. So you're talking about $250,000 just to apply into the lottery. No traditional average person has that much money just to apply, right? For the possibility of being selected. So that already shows you how those 6 are likely to be people who have, some very heavy hitters in terms of financiers backing them. When the council reviews it, they'll be evaluating whether somebody is a true social equity applicant and whether it meets certain criteria. So we're waiting, waiting with bated breath for the outcome of who is going to get selected. I think, certainly as someone in this, embarking on this journey, I want to support, all of the social equity applicants and all of the traditional applicants that will be entering into this industry, because I think it's important for the state for us to be competitive in this way and to be innovative. This is the trend, and to more importantly, ensure that the businesses that do eventually start their operations in Connecticut are holding true to the commitment to reinvest in the communities that they're in. if we look now at the medical industry, and this is no like snide remark against them, but many of the medical operators don't operate within the urban areas, right? And so that tax revenue is not going to those communities. I think you have a few that are still in urban areas, which is great. And so the great thing about the adult use is that there's an incentive and almost a requirement that certain operators have to be in the DIAs. And so the Section 149 application, which is the cultivator license, which isn't done via lottery, those entities will have to be in one of the 32 disproportionately impacted areas, which is great in the sense that the tax revenue from those businesses will go directly to benefit those communities. And so that's when we're going to see some true direct reinvestment into the communities, reinvesting in areas of education, workforce development, criminal justice reform, environmental things, and beautifying the neighborhoods. And so housing. And so I think what I hope to see is that there's a real robust and true effort and commitment to those communities that the organizations will be in. So I have entered into a Section 149 agreement and with a multi-state operator. And, we're already starting to work on some of our social equity pillars of the business, because that's really important to me. As much as I am passionate about cannabis itself and the plant and consumer education and really learning the science behind cannabis.
You're talking about Lady Jane now.
Yes.
So I want to repeat that.
Yeah, sure. I could just go on and on and on.
No, keep on going on. So let's transition into Lady Jane. Continue.
Yeah, so under Lady Jane, we've entered into a multi-state operator agreement for Section 149 cultivator license. And so I'm really excited about it because I wasn't really my first endeavor. I really wanted to do something on the retail side. And we did submit, I did submit under Lady Jane applications on the retail license. But once I saw the way that it was trending, I just don't have the money to compete with that type of process. And so, it would be a very, 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 very rare and, like a microscopic chance that my ticket will be pulled or however they're doing the lottery. And so as I was going on this process, talking more about it, I was approached by MSO. And, I vetted them pretty well. And so we did enter into this cultivation partnership.
MSO is a multi-state operator?
Correct. They operate in a few other states outside of Connecticut. And so, I was really impressed with their corporate social responsibility, the things that they do in the communities that they are currently located in. And the team, they really took their time explaining everything to me. I believe it's a fair deal. I believe it's an equitable deal. And it's going to allow me to do a lot of good in my community by, leveraging profits directly into whichever community we ultimately are able to grow in. So I'm hoping it's going to be somewhere in the greater Hartford area, if not maybe New London County, because that's my, home. That's where I'm from, New London. So the biggest challenge right now is finding space. Land is at a premium in those urban areas. And so trying to find space that can accommodate the specs and specifications for a grow facility, which is it's a large, warehouse type of structure that we have to build out. And so it's very hard and it's a challenge to find something that's pre-existing, and then to find vacant land, and then to be able to build in the timeline that the regulators give. So right now, those Section 149 applications, I believe the Social Equity Council announced at the last meeting that there are 41 applicants. Con Resnick is reviewing them, and I believe they're going to be making a vote on those in July sometimes at the next Social Equity Council meeting. So we should find out, next month if we get the green light to get our provisional license. We've already started to look at properties and talking about the local permitting process and zoning and all of that, and building out the space. So it's really exciting. Like I said, that wasn't my first part of my business plan. That was actually, cultivation was like part of the 5-year plan. Cultivation was probably like going to be in like year 3.5, 4 when I was, mapping out my business plan. But, the thing about being an entrepreneur, you have to be ready to pivot and certainly be open to opportunity that comes. And I do believe that this is part of my calling right now. It's going to do just based on the fact that this, the profits are going to be such that I'll be able to do a lot of good in the community. And so I'm really, really excited about that.
That's really tremendous. So the Lady Jane imprint, your impact, what will you be doing for a layperson? Just give me a little brief Reader's Digest script. If I see a commercial on TV
so we can talk about it in a few ways. So from the workforce development side, right? The hope and the goal is to empower and hire people from the local community with a focus on re-entering, returning citizens. So folks who may have been criminal justice involved, training people in the different careers that exist in the cannabis industry, and certainly making sure that livable wages are being provided to my team. That's a priority, as well as benefits. So really leveraging this as a real career path. We're going to, so that's like workforce development side. Community impact, we're giving away some scholarships next week to Capital Community College as part of our Juneteenth giving. And hopefully we will form a long-term commitment to the college to be able to help with the bridge program that they have there, where they're taking students who will go from Capital, then go on to Morehouse to obtain a 4-year degree. So, I identified that program as one that I think has a lot of promise and could really make a huge and positive impact on, Greater Hartford residents and those attending Capital Community College. And so I took it to my partners and I said, hey, we should, do some type of scholarship for this, and they were open to it. So just being able to be, keep my ear in the community and what's happening and where the needs are and who's doing good work and how I can bring that back to the partnership and say, do we have resources to help fund this or help establish this? So those are the types of community involvement. We also have a pardons clinic coming up that will be in August. And so the goal is to help 200 individuals, residents of Connecticut with Connecticut criminal records, help them through the pardons process with the hope that they will get their records erased. So that's something I'm super excited about.
How can people find out about this, the expungement event?
Yes. So it'll be on August 6th, and I'll send you the information after this. But they can email pardonsday@ladyjanect.com. But I will post it. I'll send you the flyer. And so right now we're looking for volunteers to help, volunteer attorneys to help with the process, and those who want to register to have their records cleared. So that's something that we'll be doing on August 6th. The tentative location is Capital Community College. And so that's going to be an all-day event. And then I'm in talks with the law school about adopting a pardons clinic, where law students will actually help people on an ongoing basis with erasing their records. So those are some of the community impacts. And then the consumer impact is something that's near and dear to my heart as well. Really educating folks on the power of the plant and being able to be a resource for people as they traverse their cannabis journey. I was someone who came to cannabis very late in my adulthood as a result of the pandemic and struggling with stress and anxiety. And I don't drink and I don't smoke. And so, the gym was really my outlet in the way that I decompartmentalize and de-stress. Certainly, as you can imagine, being a criminal defense attorney, I'm a mom of 3 kids, things can get a little hectic. And the pandemic was just such a time of uncertainty. And usually I look at uncertain times as, endless possibility, but it was just such a crazy and dark time for so many people. And so I started to learn more about the plant and learn about the ways that cannabis can be leveraged for your well-being and help with coping with stress and anxiety. And for me, it helped tremendously. And so I want to, continue to be an advocate for especially people, because I believe, in our ancestors leveraged the plant for their wellness. During the Renaissance era, Black people dealt with lots of racial oppression, and cannabis was a way for us to connect and be in community and to deal with that racial oppression. And so now we're seeing a resurgence, but there's so much stigma and there's so much shame that has been assigned to cannabis utilization because of the war on drugs, because of prohibition, that a lot of us will not utilize this medicine that I believe can be a game changer. And so I see Lady Jane as being a way to impart that education, that consumer education, teaching folks about the wellness benefits, about terpenes, about your own endocannabinoid system and the way that cannabis interacts and recepts certain things to give you balance. So I just see so many opportunities, with the industry, and Lady Jane is a luxury brand. And so, it's not, I know I love my stoners and love my stoner bros and all of those folks, but that's not me, and I don't identify with that, as a woman, as a professional, and as someone who, has a certain persona, and so I want to be able to be that brand for professionals and for people trying to come into the space and figure out how they can use cannabis as an alternative to some of the things that are very harmful to you, such as alcohol, such as opiates, antidepressants, all of those things that aren't really good for your system. So I believe this is a natural alternative, a natural way to healing. And I just find, so many benefits from it, has allowed me to really embrace self-compassion, has allowed me to really drop a lot of the self-judgment that I think we assign to ourselves, especially as Black people, especially those of us with type A personalities who are always striving for excellence and things of that nature.
You're a type A plus personality. Let the record show.
Exactly.
But you want to take me back, because I just want to be clear that I heard you correctly. You've applied to be selected in the lottery, but I also hear you saying that even if that does not come about, you're still providing assistance and help and services.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of events.
I want people to kind of understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because for me, I have a couple of different, contingency plans, right? If I don't get selected in the lottery, which is very unlikely that I would get selected in the lottery, we have the cultivation entity. And so through that, it's going to allow me to do a lot. And then through Lady Jane, we're going to have events. We're going to be doing community outreach. We're going to continue to do community giving. I'm probably going to establish a 501c3, the Lady Jane Foundation. And essentially the model for that is trying to help other cannabis businesses provide social impact, positive social impact. So setting up a social impact framework within the cannabis industry so that other, businesses, which will inevitably be here, can have a framework that works in the communities that they're in, and they don't feel like they have to reinvent the wheel. And that way you can really have a collective impact statewide, where you don't have a bunch of people doing these little one-off things. Everybody's collectively trying to move the needle in a positive way. And so that's the way you have a community impact and a statewide impact. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that I'm working on at once, because like I said, once I started to see how the lottery was gonna go, I said, oh, that's not quite gonna probably work out, but I still want to be a part of this industry, and I think it's really important. And it's an opportunity right now. It's tough because we don't see a lot of Black and brown folks in the industry. I think less than 3% ownership is by Black and brown people of color, and then for women, it's probably even less than that. And so I think it's important for us to go on this journey, to be courageous, be brave, and try something different. I don't see any downside to it at all, and so either I win or I win big, and that's the way I see it.
I love that. And Tiana, talk to me a little bit about, before we go to legislation and perhaps changes that might need to be made. With your having your MBA, when did you secure your MBA credential, if I can use that phrase?
So I got that also at UConn.
At like 2012, 2015?
Yep. So I did a dual degree at UConn. I got it in 2008. So I did 2 years of law school, and then I did a year of business school, and then the next year, both business and law. So I did a JD MBA. And so I obtained both degrees in 2008.
And so talk to me about when the graduation in 2008, and now we're in 2022. I mean, you had no idea that skill set would be so applicable. I mean, like laser needed today.
Yeah.
Not that you weren't, not that you haven't been successful since 2008 up until now, But
Right. So I get
just that to encourage people to kind of know that, work on your skills now. You don't know what the future might be, but the investment in you and your development, the sky may not be the limit, but someone's going to go to the moon other than Zuckerberg and others. So it might as well be you.
Yeah, I think I love that you said, because sometimes I don't even like really take the time to recognize and reflect on that. You know what I mean? I just have always been intellectually curious person, and knowing that, as a Black woman, you have, unfortunately, strikes against you just based off of that. And so the way that, and I don't come from a family of wealth, right? So that's a third one. And so for me, it was like, okay, what is in my control that I can use to offset some of these things, to put myself in rooms that otherwise I would not be able to. And having the same personality, same, intellect, but when you have those degrees behind your name, certainly it opens up opportunity, especially in this small state of Connecticut, and so the having the degree, and then having the training and having the education to back it, and now the experience as well, being able to build up teams, being able to identify opportunity, being able to bring people around an idea and a mission, being able to look at balance sheets and make projections when it comes to finances, and understand legal regulations and legal mumbo jumbo, understand marketing, understand the psychology behind consumer habits, and all of that has been able to play into this process, which has been really, really amazing. But I think the thing that has led me most, precedes and transcends the degrees, is my values, and my commitment to my community. And that, even as a child, I've been involved in service. And so this allows me to do it with a little bit more finesse, because now I will have resources to do that. I won't have to go and beg funders to fund a certain thing or try to convince people on a grant application. I'll be able to go to my team and say, this is something we should do, write the check, and that is, I think that's pretty cool. I love that I'll be in a position to do that,
Before we go to possible changes in legislation, and it's important for people to know that politics, you hear about a short session or a long session in Hartford, but every year our democracy in a way kind of operates. So although there might be something written on the books today, it doesn't mean it can't be revised and improved in a good way, rather than in terms of an 89-page document to propose abolishing abortion. But I digress. But how can other folks get involved with Lady Jane and this is exciting to hear.
Yeah, so we're going to have a bunch of events coming up over the summer. We have our first kind of like official branded event will be on July 21st. It's going to be a cannabis and cocktails mixer at the Hartford Flavor Company. And so we'll kind of be doing a soft introduction of our team and talking about, having some fun with cannabis, doing some CBD mocktails and cocktails, and talking about the different ways that cannabis can be consumed, because I know a lot of people don't like to smoke. And so teaching folks about the different consumption methods, I think, is an important part of the work, so that you can capture more of those who may be curious about cannabis. And so that will be an event that we have on the 21st. LadyJaneCT.com is the website. It's up and running. It's still got some tweaks that need to be made, but you can certainly submit your name and your email and to stay abreast of all the things that we have happening throughout the summer. The expungement clinic, as I already mentioned, is a huge thing that we're interested in, that we're excited about, and we'll have some brunches throughout the summer. And I'm hoping to host a cannabis wellness conference. It'll probably be in the spring, because between the summer and I have a child going off to college, I'm going to be pretty busy. And once we hear about the license for the cultivation, I'll be pretty busy, getting stuff up and running for that as well. But yeah, I hope that folks will want to connect and engage with all of those new operators who are going to be in the state and who are doing good work to advocate for changing the stigma, obviously erasing the stigma associated with cannabis, but most importantly, advocating for the release of every person in this nation who is still sitting behind bars as a result of a marijuana conviction. I think that's a hugely important part of the work that we cannot lose sight of.
Mhm.
And sometimes it is an afterthought in certain arenas. And I think the importance of Black and brown people being in this industry is that we are there to remind those who are making billions why they are able to do so off of the backs of those who are
Mhm.
still sitting behind bars. And so the work is always to change this industry into a more just and equitable industry. I think it's moving in that direction, but certainly depending on where you are in the country, it's not. It hasn't always been the case, and so that's why it's so important for Black and brown people to be part of this industry, whether it's in an ancillary way, whether you're providing services for the cannabis business or you're actually touching the plant, whether you're doing research and development, whether you're learning about grow methods,
Mhm.
or lab testing. There are just so
Mm,
many
mm,
possibilities.
mm.
My hope is that the law school will adopt a cannabis, course or two, because I do believe this is an emerging industry here, as well as the business school. So that's
For
another thing
sure.
that I'm working on behind the scenes, trying to get both of them to come together and adopt some more cannabis coursework that could be used as certifications for entrepreneurs who are interested in entering into the industry, so they can have some credentials that are state verified and state validated credentials through our institutions of higher learning, to just help people on their way through this journey, because there's a lot to learn,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so but
Talk to me a little bit about legislation and what you might see in terms of proposed changes or things we need to advocate for or protest for or get petitions signed for or to contact our
yeah
state
so
rep or state senator or
yeah so one of the things that there's a lot. So
we'll do
if we
another
talk about just in terms of
we'll do another show. Don't worry, I can have you back. We can do another show on a regular basis.
yeah, but I'll just touch on probably two right now.
Okay.
So one of them, if we just talk about like accessibility into the industry, I think once this first lottery round is done, at least my hope is that the council and the legislators who are part of meting out this process will make some adjustments, where people can't flood the lottery with 1,000 plus
Yeah.
entries. Like, that's just not equitable, right? If
Mhm.
that's what we're really trying to get at. I think there needs to be more licenses. I think they're making a very tight and conservative number right now, which I understand. Like, we're just getting started. Connecticut is a conservative state. You want to kind of strike that balance to being able to be competitive. But if we look at the liquor industry in Connecticut, they're not struggling at all.
Mm.
So I think we can probably look at it similarly from the industry perspective, not the
Mhm.
actual product, but from the industry perspective. So I think we can loosen up the reins a little bit with respect to licensing. And so I hope that we will see a process that more or less favors people who are true independent equity applicants, because the way that the scheme is now, you really can't be independent and be successful or even
Mm.
have a chance in the industry. And so I think there are some things that certainly need to change with respect to that. So I know that the council, I believe, will be going on a retreat in September, and part of that retreat is to, set their legislative agenda. And so I would definitely
Good.
encourage listeners, the public, to write to the Social Equity Council, write to your legislator, and things that you believe
Mhm.
need to change with respect to the process. If we look at New York, I think they've done some pretty innovative things as they have gone to adult use. So they had established licenses that were, I believe, prioritized for people with cannabis convictions. So there's specific licenses for that population, right? And so if we really want folks to transition from the legacy market to now the legal market, we need to make that accessible and truly accessible. And I think that's one way to do it, by establishing license specific for those who have a cannabis conviction on their record. In addition, I believe New York also has a model that is a co-op model. So you may have, a group of growers who, they grow a good, decent sized canopy, but they don't have the resources or the desire to have a, 100,000 square foot facility, or even a 50,000 square foot facility. And so how do you allow people to come under one umbrella together in a group to sell at farmers markets, to sell at different vending events? So right now, I'm sure you heard about the bazaars, the high bazaars, and those types of events. And unfortunately, I learned that not only have they been getting busted and raided, but people are now actually getting arrested and charged with some serious criminal charges as a result of vending at those events. So that is, I was really shocked and sad to see that that's happening. So the cannabis gifting, legislation that was passed there shouldn't be any penalties. It should be an incentive for people to transition to be legal, to get a license that allows them to operate under the current legislative scheme. But right now they can't, they can't make that transition. The resources in just the limited number of licenses don't afford them that ability. So, the purpose of this legislation shouldn't be to find new ways to criminalize people. And so we got to think of, given that we know that there are these smaller operators who are selling, craft cannabis and homegrown cannabis and are very good at what they do and sell a quality product, how do we bring them into the legal market in a way without penalizing, or being punitive? I think that's what we need to figure out on the legislative side.
Let me shift for just a second as we conclude. We have about 12 more minutes, and whatever's on your heart, mind, and soul to say, it's open. You have an open mic. But what would you say to mothers right now? Because you mentioned the juggling act between your job and your children, and just staying healthy and sober. Well, if not sober, just getting up on the right side of the bed each morning. But what would you say to kind of mothers in this regard that are engaged in this juggling act?
Yeah, I mean, I think, oh man, this could be a whole nother show.
We can do a third show. You have carte blanche.
I would say to mothers is give yourself grace. We need to realize that our best on our worst day is probably a lot better than the average person on their best day, right? We are in charge of not only our own lives and well-being, but the lives of oftentimes multiple other humans, and trying to usher them through the world safely and responsibly. And so give yourself grace. Have as much as possible a village and a support system of people who are positive and encouraging, and that you can delegate things to, that you trust. That is extremely important, because I sit on city council. I'm in this entrepreneurship journey. I have a full-time job and I have 3 children, and I also try to have some semblance of a social life and time to myself, and that's a lot to juggle. And I think sometimes the house doesn't always get clean. Sometimes we are ordering Uber Eats for multiple days in a row, but the kids are always eating, they're always happy, they're safe. And so those are the things that are most important. And I would encourage moms to look into, if you don't already utilize cannabis. I'm not, trying to push that down anyone's throat by any means, but for me, it has been an integral part of my self-care when I feel myself just getting really, really stressed. That is a way for me to just be able to take one thing at a time and be able to really give myself that compassion and be able to say, hey, you got this. Mellow out, chill out. Nobody died. The day was a success. But meditation has also been a part of my wellness, prayer as well. And so, I think it's just trying to assemble as many resources as you can access to really support you in your journey as a mom. Nothing can prepare you for it. It is incredibly challenging, the hardest thing you'll ever do. But obviously, I know it sounds cliche, it is the most rewarding thing. And so I see you, all you moms, especially single moms. And I know that day in and day out, you're giving your best to your families and to communities. But don't forget to give your best to yourself, because we often come last on the totem pole. And I'm really working to shift that, where I come first, my needs come first, and then I can handle everything else.
No, I'm so glad you referenced the wellness aspect. And again, my mind went back to, I think it was 2011 actually, that we were in the Connecticut Health Foundation leadership. So that's more than more than 10 years ago, although we're younger
I
now.
know.
We're younger now than we were then.
Absolutely.
Uh, but yeah, so, and everything you've talked about is, to me, is the integrating your wellness, your economic wellness, your social wellness, your psychological wellness, your body wellness. Is just, it's all connected. And just for people to kind of see what you're involved with, and to help support you, and for us to help support one another, uh, is so exciting. And we have like 5 more minutes. I want to kind of give you a chance to things that we might not have discussed. Certainly, I want to continue to promote your upcoming activities. I know you're in court, so you might have had to be disconnected.
Oh, I feel like I lost you.
Just explain to listeners that you were taking a special moment. You were actually in court and had to kind of break away and had not expected to have to be in court today. So that's the reason for some of the technical glitches. And Harry, if Tiana is not able
I'm back now. I don't.
You're back? Okay.
Yeah, the screen had went black. I don't know why. That.
Well, again, I just want to thank you again. Give me some closing comments of what's on your heart, mind, and soul today. I'll give you a little teaser. You also in the past have been very much involved with inspiring ladies to understand what the feminine archetype is all about, the feminine persona. I think this also relates to what you're involved with now in terms of. So I want to give you a chance if that's something that's still is a focus of yours. Because we hear this term Black female magic, which is kind of a stereotype, but when I've seen your events, it really gets down to the Venus. It gets down to Eve. It's not just a buzzword. It's a true energy expression that we men tend to not really understand or appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, this could be another session.
That's the fourth show we'll do.
The essence and power of femininity has always been like my secret superpower, right? I disarm people with my femininity because folks are expecting a certain thing, when you just read my resume, right? Oh, you're expecting this, really, kind of power, aggressive, maybe woman and who may have an attitude, but no, I'm really about using my femininity to disarm people, to let you bring down your guard in a way that is going to allow us to have an aligned mission and be able to accomplish so much more than if we're coming at it from polar opposites. So, for me, I think women are the most powerful, beautiful beings on the planet, and that sometimes as Black women, because of the history and because of all that we go through, the strife and the trauma and the stress and the strain of just trying to exist, that we often have to put that away in order to just survive. And, for me, it's about leveraging that as part of your survival in a way that feels more natural. And so that's what I love about, making this transition from the law, hopefully, into cannabis, is because it allows me to be creative. Mm-hmm. It allows me to be more nurturing and more collaborative. I don't got to argue with nobody. It's just allows me to really tap in to the more feminine side of myself and of my personality, which is where I'm so much more comfortable. And so, I would love to talk more about that with another group of ladies as well, because there's a lot of women who I admire in the state, throughout the state, doing work in this space, especially for Black women, because it has been robbed from us, for so long and used as a way to almost shame us and make us feel weak and less than. Mm-hmm. But I think if we can really do a shift and recognize the power in it and how it is, so it's critical to, I believe, our survival and well-being and our progression and elevation as Black people.
Yes.
That we need to harness the feminine essence, and it's important. So it certainly takes a lot of that as far as the brand, for sure. So I appreciate you mentioning that, because I think I just take that for granted sometimes. But I'm happy that you were able to recognize that.
Oh, absolutely. And Harry, we're going to have that to be the last word, because Tiana's been able to kind of. You've been traveling and sparing and double dipping right now. So
on me, I don't know why it keeps going out black, but yeah, I appreciate you making that connection and recognizing that, because it is a big part of the brand. It is a big part of who I am. and it's something that I pride. So.
Well, I salute you. Harry, we're all set. Thank you for being the station manager. And Tiana, thank you so much. Tiana Victoria Hercules has been with us. And I love Hercules for even what all that connotes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear.
As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing.